Good day everyone, I'm Noel Ferral-Peran, a BEd student, and I will be your discussant for today. So my topic is all about the purposes of assessment and the rules of assessment in teaching and learning assessment. So be with me as I tackled and discuss about my topic. At the end of the lesson, the students are expected to learn the purpose of the classroom assessment and the rules of the classroom assessment in the teaching and learning process. So let us first define what is assessment. So assessment refers to all those activities undertaken by teachers and by their students in assessing themselves, which provide information to be used as feedback to modify the teaching learning activities in which they are engaged. So in my own understanding about the definition of assessment, it is something that allows students and teachers to grow. It is a huge help for education system to modify the growth of a child and the teachers so that they can assess and plan what's best for them. Moreover, assessment isn't just about helping the students academically, but also help to grow as persons since they have time to reflect on themselves and might as well on that teacher. Let us first discuss about the purpose of classroom assessment. First, we have assessment of learning or also known as assessment ng natutunan o pagkatuto. It is a summative type of assessment used by the teacher to determine what the students have learned in a unit or chapter against specified standards or goal. So assessment of learning is found at the end of every unit or chapter in order to certify the student's competence. So example of these assessment are mastery tests, periodical tests for the basic education, achievement tests, prelim, and final for college level. So this kind of assessment of learning is assessment for grading purposes, and these type of assessment are usually being reported by the teacher. Let us proceed with the assessment for learners or assessment para sa pagkatuto. So it is a type of formative assessment that teachers utilize to help them improve their teaching. It can happen before and during the learning sequence to assess progress and identify gaps. So that is, so learning progress and learning gaps are both important. Take note of that. So formative comes from the word format, which implies that the instructor looks at all the activities in class and decides whether to reteach the topic or go on to the next based on the evidence presented by the assessment. Example of these are seat works, question and answer portion during discussion. So ideally, assessment for learning results are recorded but not graded. Take note of that again, are not part of the grading. So basically, assessment for learning is done to improve teaching and learning process. The last type of assessment is assessment as learning or also known as assessment bilang pagkatuto. So this is what we call self-assessment. This is also formative in nature wherein the students are given the opportunity to monitor and critically reflect their own learning and prepare the necessary adjustments for their learning. So this is a self-directed learning as well wherein the students use their metacognitive processes to think about their own learning or find what strategies to support that particular learning and the mechanism that will use to advance that learning. So example of these are reflection and insights. Assessment as learning is the highest form of assessment, and this is used for students to monitor their own learning progress. So, those are the three purposes of classroom assessment. Do you still remember the three purposes of classroom assessment? Very good. We have assessment for learners, which is done by teachers, and of course, throughout a learning sequence and is planned when teachers design teaching and learning activities. The second one is that we have assessment of learning and also done by teachers. So this kind of assessment wherein teachers uses judgments about students' achievements at a point of time and is supported by example of evidences. And the last one is assessment as learning. It is done by the learners. Therefore, basically or ideally, it involves students in self-assessment. Students' learning was aided by the use of teaching. As a result, it is critical that learners' assessments are in line with their instructions and learning goals. In identifying the exact objectives and techniques for assessment, understanding what will be taught is just as crucial as knowing what we want from the very start. So teachers can better align their efforts if they have a clear understanding of why they are doing the assessment. Teachers frequently utilize assessment classroom of learning rather than assessment for learning and assessment as learning in their classrooms. However, in ideal world, all three reasons or assessment of classrooms would be employed. While doing an assessment with all three goals in mind is challenging. So instructors or teachers must be able to grasp the three reasons of assessment as well as when and how to employ them. Yes, now that we are done with the purposes of assessment, we can move on to the next topic, which is the rules of classroom assessment in the teaching learning assessment. So now, basically, we are done with the purposes of classroom assessment. Now we're about to tackle the rule of classroom assessment in the teaching learning assessment. So number one rule is formative. When we say formative, it is to acquire information in the current status and level of learning's knowledge and skills or competency. Therefore, here, teachers will acquire information of the child's level of competencies and knowledge and skills. When we see also formative, it is to design instructional plan to better suit the needs of the learners. So since the teachers acquire information on the current status or level of the learners, so if the teachers already know the status of the learners, she can able to grasp a plan for a better improvement of those learners who acquire few information, let us say, or a little amount of knowledge from the lessons. And when we see also formative, it is to modify instructions or learning activities to help learners achieve the learning outcomes. So when the teachers have received or acquired information on the current status or level of the child's, he or she need to reflect if the strategies and methods that he or she uses are effective in a current situation of a child. It's not all about the learning activities that the teachers should reflect. It is him or herself. Furthermore, the teacher needs to modify instructions or learning activities. It is because some instructions are very hard for learners to perceive or to interpret. That's why it is important for the teachers to modify the instructions or learning activities to better achieve the learning outcomes. Now that we are done with formative, let's move on to the next one, which is diagnostic. So when you say diagnostic, it is to identify specific learners' weaknesses or difficulties that may affect their achievements of the intended learning outcomes. So it is our job as a teachers to know when and where our learners are having difficulties so that we can assess them. So if the teachers already know the learner's weaknesses or difficulties, he or she might focus on the specific needs and provide opportunities for instructional intervention or remediation inside or outside the classroom, depending on the lacking or the weaknesses or the difficulties that the learners are experiencing. So when we see also diagnostic, it may lead to differentiated instructions or even individualized learning plans when deemed necessary, because in one classroom there are a lot of students, right, or learners. So there are have different weaknesses or difficulties in achieving the intended learning outcomes. So when a teacher knows that, he can imply a differentiated instructions or can have an activities from the person different from or to another learners if it is necessary. It is how diagnostic works. It intend to give any specific help to the persons who have any specific needs by the teachers. So it's up to the teachers whether he or she will give individualized learning plans or differentiated instructions to those learners who are having difficulties. Now that we are done with diagnostic and formative, let's move on to evaluation. So evaluation, it is to measure learners' performance or achievement. So it is basically measuring the learner's performance or achievements through assessment. So for the purposes of making judgment or grading in particular. So in evaluating, the teachers might able to grade those learners based from the performance or the evidences that they produce. So when you see also evaluate, the learner's placement or promotion to the next educational level is informed by the assessment results. So the assessment results will decide if the learners will have remediation or having to retake the lessons that they have. So it's either the learners will move on or will stay in to the lessons that they have based from the assessment result. Now that we are done with 3, the fourth one is facilitative. So it is said that classroom assessment may affect students' learning. So on the part of teachers, assessment for learning provides information on students' learning and achievement that teacher can use to improve the instruction and the learning experiences of learners. So the outcome of assessment shows the achievement of a child or the status of the learners. So if the teachers have already access or acquired information or the knowledge of the child's level, he or she can improve his or her instruction and also the learning experiences that a child might have. So on the part of learners, assessment as learning allows them to monitor, evaluate, and improve their own learning strategies. So it is not about the teachers or the instructors that grow when they know the result or acquire the information, but also the learners. So when the learners know the result of the assessment, he can reflect or monitor or to evaluate himself on the things that he or she need to work in order to achieve a certain goals. So the last one is motivational. When you say motivational, it is the classroom assessment that serves as a mechanism for learners to be motivated and engaged in learning and achievement in the classroom. In what way? You know what? It is very true that sometimes the scores that we get from the quizzes and exam that we have motivated us, especially when we scored below the standard of the passing score. It motivates us, and we promise to ourselves that the next time that we will take the exam or quizzes, we are going to perfect that. And it is good to know that there are few students who uses the scores to motivate themselves to study hard, to reflect, and also to be more engaged in learning inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So in motivational, it is not about the learners that will benefit from the classroom assessment, might as well as the teachers or the instructors, because the instructors can able to see the weaknesses that they have in the teaching process. So a teacher can also focus on the progress. A teacher can also provide an effective feedback or an innovative assessment task for the child, and using scaffolding during assessment activities to provide opportunities for every learners, and also for assessment to be motivating rather than demotivating. Furthermore, in motivational, it motivates the teachers to give their best, in the learning process, so that the child will learn from day-to-day class. So that's all from my report. I hope you have learned something from me, and keep always safe and stay healthy and stay hydrated. Thank you.